Responsibility has always been indistinguishable from leadership. It has been understood through all ages and all cultures. Even Sun Tzu in The Art of War spoke of this. They have been so intertwined that many would say they are one and the same. Leadership is responsibility. Responsibility has two sides, and you cannot have one without the other. To abstract one side is in its very definition to eliminate the other side. When you have responsibility, you have the power to act independently from others. But that also means that by acting independently, you are accountable or to blame for those actions. After all, how can someone else get blamed for your actions when you acted on them independently? And how can you be a leader if you cannot act independently?
When things go well, the greatest leaders share it. They spread it around. When things go wrong, they step up and say it was me, even when they know it was a member of the team that didn't get it right. The worst leaders sit there and go, who can I pin this on? Who can I pin this on and get it away from me?
In the USA back in the frontier days of the 19th century, poker was a common pastime activity among Americans. Poker requires a dealer to, well, deal the cards. Today this duty is marked by the dealer button, but back in poker's heyday it was common for a buckhorn knife to be used. Passing the knife, or buck, along as it was your turn to deal was called passing the buck. This led to the saying, the buck stops here. Truman made this saying sit on his desk in the Oval Office on a plate.
Well, nobody else could make the decision but me because I was the president and the final decision comes to the president, you know. I used to have a sign on my desk that said, the buck stops here. The buck stops at the president's desk when he's president of the United States, and he either makes the decisions or he lets them go by default, and you can't afford to do that when you're president.
Politicians were so understanding of this fact that responsibility is part of leadership, and them as the leaders of America generally were willing to take responsibility when faced with the facts of failure for something that was under the executive's branch of control. We have Truman as shown, but also Kennedy after the Pay of Pigs, calling himself the responsible officer of the government.
Not to conceal responsibility because I'm the responsible officer of the government, but merely because and that is quite obvious. There's an old saying that victory has 100 fathers and defeat is an orphan.
Reagan also apologized for not having more involvement in the Security Council.
First, let me say I take full responsibility for my own actions and for those of my administration. As angry as I may be about activities undertaken without my knowledge, I am still accountable for those activities.
Then there's the man who took a lot of heat from the right for apologizing a little too much. Even though he never really directly said sorry, nevertheless always showed remorse, not only for his own actions, but for the nation as a whole.
Our government made a series of hasty decisions. I believe that many of these decisions were motivated by a sincere desire to protect the American people. But I also believe that all too often our government made decisions based on fear rather than foresight. We sometimes make mistakes. We have not been perfect. We have to acknowledge potentially we've made some mistakes. That's how we learn. But the fact that we are willing to acknowledge them and then move forward, that is precisely why I am proud to be President of the United States, and that's why you should be proud to be members of the CIA.
Agree with him or not, he was the talking head of the nation for the time he was in the Oval Office, and he had the duty of taking responsibility for the nation. Obama was an intellectual, and he had a fundamental understanding of what it meant to be a leader and the role he played in the American government. Which brings us to our current fearless leader.
Importantly, anybody right now and yesterday, anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there. They have the tests. And the tests are beautiful. Anybody that needs a test gets a test.
Fauci said earlier this week that the lag in testing was, in fact, a failing. Do you take responsibility for that? And when can you guarantee that every single American who needs a test will be able to have a test? What's the date of that?
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all because we were given of the effort of the federal government. And I'll tell you, Jim, let me just tell you, we started off with empty cupboards. The last administration left us nothing. The states should have been building their stockpiles. Don't forget, the cupboard was bare. The other administration, the last administration, left us nothing. We didn't have ventilators, we didn't have medical equipment, we didn't have testing. The tests were broken, you saw that. We had broken tests. They left us nothing. And we've taken it and we have built an incredible stockpile, a stockpile like we've never had before.
Many people have heard you say that along the way and have wondered, though, you're 3 years into your first term.
Yeah.
You're now applying for the job again. What did you do when you became president to restock those cupboards that you say were bare?
Well, I'll be honest, I have a lot of things going on.
So it's clear that our current president is not like the others in the sense he fails to take responsibility for the shortcomings of his administration, and even denies them outright. So what does that say about his leadership skills? I'm going to leave off with Dean Robert Joss of Stanford Business with these words of wisdom of what it means to be at the top and in a leadership role.
Here's my definition of the top. Look, it's any position where you take responsibility for a group with a mission to fulfill. It's any job, any role, any position. You take responsibility, you feel it, and you own it. It's all about responsibility. When you're at the top, it's not about power or fame or fortune. It's about responsibility. You're responsible for the group. You're responsible for moving that group in the right direction over time so that it gets better. And you're the only one that has that total responsibility across all dimensions, all parts of the group, how the group acts, how it thinks, how it feels, how it performs.